Well, good morning. We're still looking for the Ferrari. Apparently it's backed up in traffic. I know there's been a little bit of a challenge with the parking this morning. My name is Spencer Eccles. I'm the Executive Director of the Governor's Office of Economic Development, and it's my honor for my fifth straight Governor's Economic Conference to be involved. There's a tremendous amount of time and effort that goes into this, and I know that you all realize it, but we've been working diligently, I think, for 2 years to get some of the speakers here. And what we'll be doing tomorrow is starting on next year's summit. But I'd like to just acknowledge, in particular, Michael Sullivan. Where are you, Michael? Wave your hand. He's around here somewhere, doing something great. Anyway, he works in our office. He has taken this event to a whole new level this year and driven it to perfection. I just really appreciate his work, the work of our team within what we call GoEd, and then also our great partners at Media One, and I'll mention them, but especially Jed Call also, who boots on the ground helping us through that effort. This year it's sold out. We usually have a great attendance, but we were getting calls, over 100, 200 calls as late as just this last week to have people come here. And I think that you'll be well rewarded when we get to the main part of the show. But I'd like to acknowledge the presence of our great governor, 17th governor of the great state of Utah, Governor Gary R. Herbert, here at my left. This is the 8th annual summit. I'd also like to recognize Brent Lowe. He's the president of Media One and been our partners in this effort for the past 8 years. And it's also my privilege to thank the many sponsors for their many significant contributions, both in time and effort, but as well as capital to help put this on. We'd like to thank Leslie Hinsey, who's with the executive director of the Governor's Committee for Employment of People with Disabilities, who's been a partner in producing this year's summit. And then if you just take a look at the screen, we're going to go through our sponsors. Our presenting sponsor, Zions Bank, for 8 straight years, and Scott Anderson, we'd just like to thank you for all the support that you guys have given us. Our major sponsors include, and you'll find these in your program as well, but Questar, CBRE, Intermountain Healthcare, Deseret Management Corporation, and American Express. You just give them a round of applause. And then we'd like to thank our event sponsors, and they can be seen on the slides behind us. And again, you can also find the event sponsors in your program, and then our corporate sponsors as well. And take a moment again to take a look at your programs, get acquainted with them, and reward them for what they've done. It's a big effort to do this. We can't do it alone, and we're grateful to them. And just one final round of applause to our sponsors. Thank you. Now I'm going to recognize the people up here with me on the dais, and if you hold your applause, we'll roll through them. Governor Gary R. Herbert, who we mentioned, Clayton Christensen, who will be our keynote today from Harvard Business School, Scott Anderson of Zions Bank, and our presenting sponsor, again, for the last 8 years, my good friend and the Governor's Chief of Staff, Derek Miller, who has really made the success that we've had within GoEd over the last several years possible because of his effort. So we just like to thank him especially. And then formerly Bishop and now retired and put back to work, Keith McMullen of the Deseret Management Corporation, a major sponsor. Mark Bouchard, a great partner and a leader in the community on education and with CBRE and a sponsor, and Ton Jefferson from Questar, again, another great partner of ours, is a major sponsor. Now on my right, we have our newly heralded and first time ever at this event as a Lieutenant Governor, Spencer Cox, who just demonstrated great leadership in the last legislative session. We'd like to thank you for that. And I would note, from Fairview, Utah, which is where my mother's from. Maybe we'll give you a round of applause for that. Then Dick Marriott from Host Hotels and Resorts, one of our major presenters, and we're just so grateful for you being here, Mr. Marriott, and all that you're doing. Ginger Wersbanowski from Northrop Grumman, another one of our major presenters. Natalie Gochnour, who formerly with the Salt Lake Chamber, still helping them, but now as Associate Dean at the University of Utah, David Eccles School of Business, and she'll be presenting shortly. Bert Zimmerly, our partner at Intermountain Healthcare and major sponsor. Mayor Ben McAdams of Salt Lake County, and Brent Lowe, who I mentioned earlier, our producing partner and the president of Media One. And then finally our partner, Jeff Edwards. All the great work that we do on economic development and growth here occurs because of the great partnership that we have with EDC Utah, Economic Development Corporation Utah. Thank you, Jeff. And so give him a big round of applause. Thank you. Now I'd like to invite you all to stand. We're going to have the presentation of the colors from our Utah National Guard. And if you'd rise, we'd have the national anthem as they present the colors. Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you. I'd like to First and foremost, I think just in light of the Fort Hood shootings last night, just acknowledge that, and our love and thoughts and prayers go out to the families of those who've lost loved ones and those who are injured and impacted by that, as well as those who've served, our young men and women who've served in the military. And we'd like to thank, special thanks to Sergeant First Class Koka, who just presented the arms and led that group, as well as Colonel Gary Harder, who helped us organize that, head of the Veterans Affairs and Governor's Military Policy Advisor. Actually, also used to work in our office. So I'm just going to outline today's event, or today's events. The Governor will officially address us around noontime today, and following our keynote speaker, we'll have two major presentations. The first one, they'll be together, and the first, acknowledging the one occurring in this room at 10 o'clock, will feature Dick Marriott, the chairman of the Board of Host Hotels and Resorts, and the other presentation will be held in the combined Imperial Ballroom just down the hall to the north, and that will feature Ginger Wiersbanowski, and she's with Northrop Grumman, and both of those are going to be excellent presentations, so please take a look at your program and make a choice as to where you'd like to go. I'd also especially note the sessions that will occur after today's luncheon. We have one breakout session, but then also we started this about 3 years ago. We have Utah's own brand, which originated really in the Department of Agriculture, to feature these great agricultural products that are coming out of Utah. But for the first time ever, the Grand America Hotels opened up their premier kitchens to some of the student chefs and that we have, and we'll be working side by side with the top chefs from the Grand America here. And Utah's own food will be prepared within there. So we're grateful to the Grand America. And again, if we could just acknowledge the Grand America, their staff, and the effort that they put forward, that'd be great. Thank you. So now I just like to briefly set the stage in preparation for the entire day. 5 years ago, the governor set out what at the time was somewhat of an audacious goal. And most of my team, I'm certain, because they don't want to drop and give me 10 push-ups right now, will have their green card. I make them do that. Colonel Gary Harder will attest to it. But, you know, Utah is truly one of the best performing economies in the nation. We set that goal 5 years ago when Governor Herbert took over in 2009. I think we all recall how difficult the times were and what a challenge was facing us. But we said, you know, we want to set a goal, and we want to be accountable to that. We want to be the leading economy in the nation, and we want to be recognized as a premier global business destination. And I think that we've attained much of that goal in many ways, but we cannot stop innovating. And the governor's proven that he's committed to that effort. And as you look at the commitment that he made to education over this past session, we're heading in that direction. So, Governor, we'd like to thank you for that. But the question is why are we doing so well? The world is an extremely competitive place. And how do we keep Utah on the top? And there are many areas where we can grow and improve our performance, and we're doing it on a daily basis. The strong focus on education, as I mentioned, the STEM initiative, more than $20 million went into the STEM Action Center in this last session. And so we thank the governor and also the legislature on that. But more than that, over $370 million new money going into education. So a better bottom line is also the major theme of the National Governors Association. And the governor this year is currently serving as a vice chair, and next year will take over as the chairman of the National Governors Association. And you'll notice throughout the day our emphasis on executing the fundamentals for a better bottom line. And that NGA theme ties right into that. So when I was ski racing, when things weren't going right, we always fell back onto the fundamentals. And I think that Utah's proven that at times it can be a little boring, but when you go through an economic downturn, it turns into a buyer's market. And that's what Utah's been able to execute on over the last 5 years coming out of this downturn. So we're also going to be shedding light on the underutilized workforce that we have in our community. And that's the white-collar disabled worker. approximately 1 out of every 5 individuals in the United States has a disability of some sort. And currently there are approximately 23,000 people in Utah's workforce that have a disability and who are underemployed and still looking for work, but fully capable of doing that of doing work and having full employment. When it comes to our disabled workforce and their employability, I would encourage you to consider this statement. And this came from the governor's executive director over the governor's Office of Management and Budget, Chris Cox. It's not what you can't do, it's how can I do it. And you'll note that Chris is visually impaired, and you would never know it by the way she carries herself and the way she leads out. And so those are the kind of people we have here in Utah that are capable of doing incredible things. So as you go through the many breakout sessions today, keep that in mind, this disabled community. How can we work them into our strategic plans? How can we build our office and give opportunity to everybody? So part of growing Utah's economy is to raise that bottom line, and utilizing all your strengths and executing the fundamentals is what keeps Utah going strong. And growing Utah Life Elevate is something we can all do and enjoy in every aspect of our life. So with that, now to the great part. Natalie Gochnour is going to be our next speaker. She's going to present on the economy. She's going to choose one topic. She's Associate Dean of the David Eccles School of Business. She's a great partner and a great friend, and we look forward to hearing you. Thank you, Natalie.
Good morning, everybody. Great to be with you. I'm always happy to see so many people engaged in thinking about the Utah economy, and it's a real credit to the Governor's Office of Economic Development and all the sponsors to put together such a remarkable event. It's really fun to be an economist in Utah right now. And I just have to say as I start out that to Spencer Eccles and to Derek Miller and the team at GoEd and others in the administration, legislature, all the leadership in this state, you do a great job. And I think what I'm going to share today is going to prove that. That's worthy of some applause. Now, I'll also say that I wear a little Fitbit on my arm. Maybe there's probably a two dozen of you or so that do that. And when you touch it really rapidly, it puts you to sleep. It thinks you go to sleep. That's how it monitors your sleep at night. So as you sit here and clap and then stop and then clap and stop, I've gone to sleep, woken up, gone to sleep, woken up like several times today. Well, we're going to talk about the Utah economy, and I'm going to give you an economic report. And I need that slide to advance for me there. And I'm going to show you how we compare with the nation, our unemployment rate and our job growth, because it's really impressive right now. Our unemployment rate stands at 3.9%. We're under 4% unemployment. Our job growth is at 2.5%, where the nation's is at 1.5%. This is a state that is performing, that is creating opportunity, that people are landing good jobs. If you look at this graph, the bottom row, or the bottom line, the darker line is the unemployment rate in Utah, and you see it circled at the end because we have now dipped below 4%, which a lot of economists would argue is approaching full employment. Now, in economics, we're always talking about cycles. The economy goes up, the economy goes down. It's part of how markets work. They overheat, and then they correct, and then they perform. And so we go peak to trough and trough to peak. And an economist at Workforce Services, Mark Knoll, did some very interesting analysis where he looked at employment decline state by state. And all you have to see on this graph, this is looking from the peak to the trough at all 50 states. And way down towards the bottom at 33 is Utah in red as having one of the worst economies during the downturn. So from peak to trough, we had the 33rd worst economy. If we go and look from trough to peak and look at how we came out of the downturn, you get a completely different story where now Utah jumps up to be the third highest, see the red bar there, the third best performing economy through the downturn, with only 2 energy states doing better. And so this is like a really remarkable thing to see us pop like that. And I would tell you that A lot of great things happened. We invested in I-15 core, great for the economy, helped us here. 1,600 jobs at peak employment. City Creek Center, a major private sector investment, employed 1,700 people during a time when we desperately needed it, helped us do this. The NSA data center, you know, we speak a lot of languages in the state, we have reasonable energy prices, we get a major development like an NSA data center, helped us spring out of that recovery, or that downturn. So there's also a lot of things that are just the fundamentals that Spencer spoke about. Great underlying cost of doing business here, fairly well-educated workforce, low regulatory burdens, reasonable tax structure, great fiscal responsibility on Capitol Hill. And the combination of all those things has made me kind of have a little fun and coin a term. I worked with Mike Levitt. Some of you will know that he wasn't beyond making up words when they helped him. In Libra might be something some of you remember. So I've made up this term I call prospertarian. It's a noun. The plural would be prospertarians. It's people who experience remarkable economic success because of the choices they make. That makes you a prospertarian. And I'm going to make the case that in Utah we're prospertarians. So if I look at the top 8 job growth states right now, Nevada actually just popped to be the top fastest growing economy in the country. This is from February of 2013 to February of 2014. North Dakota, it's been up there for a long time because of the amount of energy development and the Bacon Formation, private land, but it's number 2. And then you go down the list and you'll see Utah there ranking 7th of the 8th. So we are a top performing state in the country. Now, sometimes we've been 1, sometimes we've been 2, sometimes we've been 3. It just varies over time. But I want to tell you that when I see data like that, and I see a state to the west doing the top performance, Nevada, a state to the east, Colorado, doing the 3rd best performance, Utah right in between them. When I see California, a state that has over 35 million people now making it to the top 8 job growth states, that's so good for Utah. Long term, the Utah economy needs a healthy California economy to do well. And so we've got this situation now where the others are catching up to us a little bit, and that will help us. And so we've got western states doing well, California doing well, our neighbors doing well, and Utah remains a top performing state. Let's look at some data over time and just kind of see how it compares. Here's our job growth rate over time. You see the downturn when it was negative, and you see us now sort of plateauing at around a 3% job growth rate. That is what we need to employ the people in our state, plus bring some people in to fuel growth. This is job creation. The last one was the rate of growth. This is the number of jobs. We're now growing at about 38 to 40,000 jobs per year, and we're holding steady. That's significant, healthy job growth. Here's the job change by industry. We're growing at 2.5% overall. We have construction as the fastest growing industry in our state right now from February of 2013 to February of 2014. You see manufacturing doing well, transportation communications doing well. Look at the tourism sector, growing at 4.3%, surpassing, almost doubling the state average. Very healthy, very helpful to our state. Let's look at the unemployment rate. Some of these graphs are going up, some of them are going down. This one's going down, and we like to see that because the unemployment rate got as high as 8.1%, and it has now fallen to 3.9%. We've cut it in half. If we look at the number of unemployed, another interesting thing to look at, there was a time very recently when we had 110,000 Utahns actively looking for work. That's a chilling statistic. I like to think of Energy Solutions Arena and filling it up, and then filling it again, and again, and again, and again, and you would get that number of the 110,000. We have now brought that number down to 55,000. Again, very healthy for the state. How about net migration? Always people coming, always people going, but on net, are there more people moving into Utah or moving out? Data released last week would tell us that we have 10,000 more Utahns that have moved into the state than left. in the most recent year. Again, a sign of our healthy economy. How about personal income growth rates? At the state level, we don't really have a good measure for gross state product, like gross domestic product, so we look at personal income, a broad measure of economic activity. What's going on? Well, we've been growing at 3, 4, 5, and in the most recent year, we think we'll hit a 6% personal income growth rate. Very healthy, very strong, and it leads me to think that if we look at one other important indicator, exports in our state, where we think in 2014 we will surpass $21 billion in merchandise exports in Utah, meaning that we are very globally engaged. If you adjust that number and take out all of the primary metals, in any given year, 40 to 60% of our exports will be in copper and steel and gold. Very important, but they dominate this measure. But even if you take them out, we've grown by 77% in 7 years. Very good news for Utah. So I look at these numbers, and you know what I think? I think of our state's economic development goal to be a top performing economy and a global business destination. And I think, Governor, we might need a new goal.
Probably be better than number one.
We are very much have all cylinders running, doing very well. Great things to report. That's why it's fun to be an economist in Utah. Just in terms of global engagement, 1 in 5 jobs in our state are connected to exports. We have 7,700 international students in our state. I work on the University of Utah campus. I get to see these students. They bring money, they bring intelligence, they bring diversity, they bring thinking that challenges our students. It makes us better. We have 20,000 Utahns in our public schools enrolled in dual immersion language programs. These are children who are learning 2 languages from the beginning. Very helpful to our state. If you look at the fall enrollment reports in our State Office of Education, they ask on your enrollment, what language do you speak at home? 129 languages spoken at home from students in public schools. Again, global, international, that's Utah. And then I'd be disappointed if I didn't mention that we have the 2nd best soccer team in the country, because Real Salt Lake barely missed it, but I will take note that last night the U.S. men's national team played Mexico in Phoenix. It's a friendly game warming up for the World Cup. It was a 2-2 draw. I watched every minute of it. But we had 3 players start from Real Salt Lake on that team last night. Kyle Beckerman, Nick Raimondo, and Tony Beltran. Also, dwelling unit permits. Construction's so important to the economy. We need a strong construction sector. It's holding its own. Retail sales growth rate sitting up there in the 5 and 6% range, holding their own. Now, I have to also share with you some risks, and this isn't very hard when you look outside of Utah. The policy paralysis in Washington, D.C. is a tremendous problem. Uncharted waters of the Fed, very risky. Geopolitical instability, again, adds a lot of uncertainty in our economy, and I want to talk for 1 second about the urban-rural split in our state. So go back to Washington. I just want to tell you that from an economic perspective, it is inexcusable that we can have so much turmoil happening internationally and we don't take care of business at home. We need to reform entitlements. We need to reform our tax code. We need to reform our immigration system. Those are economic issues, and every one of us in this room should speak loudly and clearly that we need that to happen. Go to the Fed. That's actually worthy of an applause, isn't it, that we need that? If you go to the Fed and look at Janet Yellen, love that a person who has chaired the Federal Reserve Bank in San Francisco, who knows Utah, who has relationships with business leaders in this state, but we are at the limits of our understanding of what's happening in monetary policy. She needs a break, or monetary policy needs a break. We need fiscal policy to step up. We're printing a lot of money. We're the reserve currency for the world, but people are losing confidence. And if we're not careful, it'll be a huge problem for us. And then I couldn't help but put up a picture of Vladimir Putin without his shirt on a tank here. He's been on the cover of The Economist magazine, I think it's 3 or 4 times in the last 2 months. An unbelievable international figure who's misbehaving right now, creating all sorts of geopolitical uncertainty, and it's not helpful to the economy. It's not helpful to trade. It's not helpful to confidence. There was a joke during the Olympics that if you stayed in these hotels in Sochi, that there were pictures on the wall of Vladimir Putin riding mammals with his shirt off. That's sort of an odd thought, isn't it? But even as I say that, it's perfect satire because it could actually be true. Well, so now let's come back closer to home. We can't do a lot about those troubles, but they are there. Fastest growing economies in Utah, look at this list. Utah County leading the state, Paiute, Wayne, Washington, Juab, Beaver, all these economies doing real well, growing. But there are 11 counties in the state that are contracting right now, where job growth is actually less in February of 2014 than February of 2013. Look at the list. Carbon, Daggett, Emory, Garfield, Grand, Morgan, Rich, Sanpete, Sevier, Tooele, and Uinta. These are predominantly, with maybe the exception of Tooele, rural counties, and they are struggling. You'll notice energy counties on this list. That's unusual. The energy sector's been doing well, but it's adjusting, and we have a coal industry that's suffering in this state. And I want to point out to you that when rural Utah suffers, it affects urban Utah and the entire state. I have here a graph that shows you the percent of our population living in urban areas and living in rural areas. So the red line is the percent rural, and the gray line is the percent urban over time since 1850. And if you look at this, we are 91% urban in this state right now. We have urban problems as a state, congestion, air quality, growth challenges, but we have to keep rural Utah strong. As the 9th most urban state, if urban Utah doesn't care about rural Utah, then urban Utah will suffer as well, and that's the risk that I wanted to just throw out there for you. So in closing, we're prospertarians in Utah. Some people think we're Mormon. We're prospertarian. We write our own future. That's the definition of prosperity. You wouldn't call someone who just won the lottery prosperous. You'd say they were rich. You'd say they were lucky. But prosperity is earned, and we have earned our prosperity in this state. I believe that markets work, and we're being rewarded for great market conditions. I believe that government policies absolutely matter, and we need look no further than North and South Korea. When the Korean War ended, both countries had similar natural endowments, similar workforces, similar education systems, similar, but they had different forms of government, and today the gross domestic product per capita in South Korea is 17 times that in North Korea. So we have this proven track record of great economic decision making in this state. We must continue to make the right investments in human and physical capital, and we must continue to provide the right incentives for innovation that spur productivity. I've put that in there for our keynote speaker, Clayton Christensen. Thank you very much.